a few lessons for Disney. Number one, stop cannibalizing all your old IP. Like, it's really bad. It's really bad business. Number two, please stop changing all of the historic plots, which actually have meaning to generations of people, to instead become generic woke story about how woman leads revolutionary uprising and she don't need no man.
I truly do believe that. There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie, and she acts like she's some sort of victim, and that
The star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public.
she was, as woke as they are.
If Disney wants to make more woke films that tank at the box office, they are more than welcome to do that, but maybe think of an original idea.
I would highly advise that you boycott this film, no matter how much your children love Snow White.
I don't think they're gonna buy it, I don't think they're gonna watch it, I don't think they're gonna like it.
She just sounds bitter and
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable.
You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White, right? You should shut up.
Rachel Zegler, she's an asshole.
And if you disagree with this sentiment,
Spend 1 minute on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend.
They made less than $1 million in China. Just poisoning people's minds. Like, she acts.
I don't need your business. Thanks.
It's the sort of mentality that life is so bad. It's like her, the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only.
Could one actress single-handedly turn a beloved Disney fairy tale into the most controversial remake in years? That's the burning question swirling around Rachel Zegler and her now infamous portrayal of Snow White. From public spats with longtime fans to behind-the-scenes chaos that has left insiders whispering about box office doom, it's almost impossible to scroll your feed without running into someone taking a swipe at this so-called woke reimagining. Today, we're diving headfirst into the full story, how one of Disney's most iconic animated films landed in the middle of a cultural battlefield.
And to constantly say things that are like, just have enough of it, because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane, even when you do open your mouth. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film.
And why the star at the center of it all can't seem to keep her foot out of her mouth. But before we immerse ourselves in this tangled web of drama, let me ask for a small favor. Please like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you haven't already. Every single sub helps me buy more coffee. And trust me, I'm gonna need a fresh pot to keep up with the twists in this saga.
She's now bragging about the success of Snow White, which is a movie that's going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. And mainly because of her, and because nobody wanted to support her. There are empty theaters all around the country. We are now at a 1 out of 10 on IMDb for the new Snow White, and it couldn't happen to a better person.
The Snow White controversy kicked off the moment Disney announced that Rachel Zegler, fresh off her success in West Side Story, would be taking on the lead role. At first, it sounded like a typical Hollywood success story, a bright, charismatic newcomer landing a dream gig in a classic fairy tale remake. Social media lit up with excitement for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them.
Then, comments began trickling in about how certain fans felt uneasy. Some argued she was an odd choice to play a character known for a fair complexion, straight out of a 1930s animated feature. Others were suspicious of how drastically Disney might alter the original storyline to fit a modern framework. Things stayed in the realm of mild concern until early snippets of Zegler's interviews started popping up online.
Don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product meant to appeal to all. It's the Michael Jordan Republicans buy sneakers too.
She openly critiqued the 1937 Snow White, calling it dated and labeling its romantic storyline as cringe-worthy for modern audiences. If you've spent even half a second exploring the Disney fandom, you know they hold the originals close to their hearts. Suddenly, a significant chunk of that fandom felt attacked, as though she were stomping on treasured childhood memories. Instead of a poised, respectful approach, something like, "I grew up loving Snow White.
One of the 18 hours I am in the Snow White dress, I expect to get paid. If it's 18 hours, I want 18 hours of pay. I'm sure she got underpaid as a Disney lead actress.
And I'm so honored to reintroduce her to a new generation. Zegler's remarks came off as brash and condescending. And that's when the real storm began to brew. The moment she called the prince a stalker who lurks around without purpose, the internet lit up like a fireworks display on the 4th of July. Critics raged that she was disrespecting one of Walt Disney's earliest masterpieces.
People have real problems and no one gives a shit if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour.
Instead of a seamless narrative, the audience gets what
So she just encapsulates everything that most of us cannot stand about modern day feminism and the left in general, and Hollywood.
Meanwhile, supporters insisted that revision and modern updates were not just inevitable but necessary if we want these stories to reflect current values. Normally, you'd expect the main actress to toe the line, maintaining that Disney magic charm during press tours. But Zegler went another route entirely. She doubled down on the idea that the original story was outdated, dismissing the love aspect as unnecessary.
Her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern day America must make that choice.
She claimed the new Snow White would focus on independence, ambition, and presumably everything except yearning for true love. The backlash built rapidly. Fans who grew up singing "Someday My Prince Will Come" felt personally attacked. This was Snow White, after all, one of the building blocks of Disney's entire legacy. Love it or hate it, it's a cornerstone of the brand. People started asking,
be a leader as a female and fall in love and be rescued by a prince? Like, that's incongruous bullshit. That's only the left's version of what it means to be a strong woman or female empowerment.
If you dislike the story so much, why even sign on? The phrase, "get woke, go broke," popped up in more than a few comment sections, foreshadowing a box office meltdown some folks predicted months before the film was anywhere near ready. But here's the kicker. The controversy wasn't just about the actress's words. It also tapped into deeper tensions about Disney's constant string of live-action remakes and whether they're out of touch with what audiences really want. And then, in walked the 7 dwarfs, or, well, kind of.
So, I mean, this woman has clicked every box. And just for cherry on top at the end, she gave an interview last week talking about how they were basically a bunch of white supremacists on the set of West Side Story.
Around this time, Peter Dinklage, a well-known actor with dwarfism, fired shots at Disney for perpetuating backward stereotypes by retaining the dwarves in the story. Without much delay, Disney caved like a collapsing house of cards, announcing they'd swap out the dwarfs for CGI magical creatures. Cue an uproar of an entirely different variety. Little person actors across Hollywood criticized the decision.
Where Steven Spielberg and co. were demanding that she prove how Latina she really is, since her name doesn't sound Latina, and she was angrily saying, "Did I have to bring in my little abuelita for you to believe that I was Latina?"
Saying that Disney wasn't being inclusive so much as they were taking away a high-profile opportunity from a community that rarely sees itself on screen in major roles. Rachel Zegler, perhaps predictably, sided with Disney, praising them for moving beyond stereotypes and forging a new path. But many fans saw this as yet another blow to the essence of Snow White.
Disney's Bob Iger says their mission is to entertain, not send messaging as Snow White sales compete for worst performing live-action Disney adaptation ever.
It is another to convince investors that the deficits can be overlooked when a production.
While little person performers felt singled out. Some asked why Dinklage's single objection was enough to upend a classic tradition and deny a group of niche actors one of the only frequent types of roles they get. What started as a debate about cultural sensitivity quickly morphed into a swirling debate about representation, with Zegler once again in the line of fire for championing changes a lot of people disliked.
That's her thanks to Steven Spielberg, who discovered her and made her. So she's an ingrate, she's annoying, and I think she's probably 2 and done.
Even if all of that had settled, the political powder keg was right around the corner. Social media sleuths dug up old posts where Zegler allegedly insulted certain political groups, essentially telling supporters of a specific presidential candidate that she hoped they'd know nothing but misery. That's a bold stance from someone leading a family-friendly Disney venture. A large portion of that audience might support the very politicians she was slamming.
And if she hadn't have opened her mouth, I think that this movie might have done well. They might have just been able to ride on the hopium of the movie and some well-cut trailers, and people would have paid to go see it, and then it would have fallen off when people knew it was garbage.
Immediately, calls for a boycott reached new levels of intensity. Hashtags began to trend, urging families to skip this film altogether. The narrative took on a life of its own, becoming less about how she viewed Snow White and more about whether or not she'd alienated half the country with her outspoken activism. This is the point where you can almost imagine Disney executives huddled in a boardroom, looking panicked as they track the social media carnage. The brand that built its empire on warmth, inclusivity, and cross-generational appeal.
But Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and took hundreds of millions of dollars from the studio. I don't know how anyone would ever want to go into business with her ever.
Was suddenly knee-deep in a controversy. One side claimed Disney was too woke for its own good, while the other insisted the original Snow White was archaic and needed a revamp. And Rachel Zegler, the once prized star, was stuck in the eye of the storm, seemingly adding fuel to the fire with every new interview or comment. As production dragged on, rumors of costly reshoots and forced script rewrites started leaking.
Do you know, how hard it is to find an attractive young woman in Hollywood who can act in sin? It's not hard. Who just isn't going to offend half the country?
Some insiders whispered that Disney was so rattled by the public's reaction that they tinkered with the final cut multiple times, unsure of how best to juggle feminist messaging with the classic fairy tale romance. The film's budget reportedly soared above $200 million, which puts a lot of pressure on the studio to recoup that massive investment. Tracking data began to suggest that mainstream audiences might not show up in droves for a Snow White that felt more like a cultural battleground than a nostalgic night at the movies. By the time teaser trailers finally emerged, the internet was ready to pounce. Critics mocked the brief glimpses of the CGI magical creatures.
25,000 more just like her knocking on the same doors that she had opened to her. She had the opportunity of a lifetime, and instead of being humble and grateful, she was entitled and a snot,
calling them soulless replacements for a time-honored staple. Others pointed out how the footage didn't come close to capturing the whimsy of the original. Some fans noted that Zegler's expressions appeared stiff, as though even she wasn't sure how to reconcile her take on the character with the version that lives in popular consciousness. Bloggers and pundits had a field day dissecting every clip, every rumor, and every one of Zegler's comments.
And I will look forward to her not getting cast in any more movies for a long time until she actually does learn something about humanity and humility.
It started to look like Snow White might be the victim of a self-inflicted PR nightmare, overshadowing any chance of a fresh, successful adaptation. And then, of course, the conversation turned to the possible financial fallout. If the film flopped, it wouldn't just be Zegler's PR image taking a hit. It'd be a colossal body blow to Disney's live-action remake strategy. Disney had already taken some lumps in recent years with remakes that underperformed relative to sky-high budgets. As more fans threatened to boycott, some speculated this could be the project that finally made the studio rethink its reliance on reimaginings of old classics. After all, there's a limit to how many times you can bank on nostalgia if you keep alienating the very fans who loved the originals.
Who the fuck is that guy?
It's a weird walk for a weird broad, and I don't like her.
It is, and it's really mean to put her next to Gal Gadot, who's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
So
it's not fair.
Some watchers wondered if Disney might even consider quietly shelving or delaying the film to avoid a major fiscal and PR disaster. But shelving or recasting this late in the game was nearly impossible. Filming had wrapped, marketing had kicked off, and money had already been spent by the truckload. Rachel Zegler was contractually locked in, and any attempt at an 11th hour switcheroo would be too expensive, even for a studio the size of Disney. The only strategy left was to soldier on, possibly cut back on marketing.
Was this Academy Awards? Anyway, feminist Conor McGregor.
And pray that audiences would give the movie a fair shot, despite the swirling negativity. Yet every new time Zegler or her co-stars stepped in front of a microphone, the potential for more controversy loomed. It became a vicious cycle. Fans felt disrespected, Disney tried to course correct, and the stars' public stance appeared to dig them into an even deeper hole.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about
she's gonna die.
true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
So, here we are, with predictions that Snow White might open well below expectations, a wave of online commentators already calling it one of Disney's biggest potential bombs, and a star who can't seem to stop sparking outrage. In many ways, it's a cautionary tale about what happens when the unstoppable force of modern social politics.
Our rights are on the line, folks. Our reproductive rights.
Ugh.
Come on.
Go get Cheshire Cat.
Go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
Wow, what a scene.
I don't need your business.
Meets the immovable object of traditional Disney fandom. People tune into these stories for magic and nostalgia, not for divisive political jabs or an all-out war on the essence of a 1930s fairy tale. For Rachel Zegler, the question is, what comes next? She is undeniably talented as a vocalist and performer, but public perception can be unforgiving.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Will Hollywood gamble on someone pegged as divisive, or will she bounce back once the dust settles? Some actors have survived worse controversies and emerged with stable careers. Yet in an industry powered by fan approval and box office returns, a star can easily find themselves locked out if they become too polarizing. The same question lingers for Disney. If this remake truly craters at the box office, will the Mouse House finally pivot and explore new stories instead of rehashing old ones?
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced, it was a huge...
You mean your guess is as good as mine, ethnicity?
Trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
The fiasco has left many fans and critics exhausted. Some argue they just want to enjoy beloved fairy tales without a side dish of culture wars. Others say that progress and representation matter, and that a classic from 1937 needs to reflect the perspectives of 2025. Everyone, though, can agree on one thing. The conversation around Snow White has grown far beyond the film itself. It's become a mirror reflecting how culture is shifting, how fans guard nostalgic properties, and how one star's outspoken views can tilt an entire production off its axis.
The people that we need to love into awareness.
Love them in the right direction.
Yeah, because there's nothing more effective than 19-year-olds educating the rest of the voting public while yelling, "Okay, boomer."
In the end, we're left to wonder, will Snow White be remembered for shining a new light on a timeless story? Or will it go down in history as the moment Disney realized that maybe, just maybe, the formula of modernize first, worry about everything else later can seriously backfire? Only time and the box office returns will tell. But if there's one lesson to learn here, it might be that if you're stepping into the shoes of a legendary Disney princess, you probably shouldn't bash the very tale that made her iconic. And that, folks, is the story so far.
I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
Zoom in right there, that's it. 163,000 rating, of which it got 1.6, not out of 5. Like, sometimes
10.
you go to McDonald's,
Yeah.
it's 1.6 out of 5.
Yeah.
1.6 out of 10.
These people, and this is the difference between a business owner or someone who does very well for themselves in the private sector to become wealthy. This person was born looking a certain way and has a God-given ability to lie.
Iger needs to be inspired a little bit by Trump to come in and make immediate changes. Step down, bring somebody else to make immediate changes.
They didn't earn it the same way, and so it comes with this entitlement. They had the whole dwarf midget issue where they decided they weren't going to have any midget actors, right? They were having DEI-inspired magical creatures to replace, right? Went over about $250 million. Some of you want us to hire actual dwarf humans, and then we thought we would have CGI magical creatures. How about this? We'll still offend the dwarves, but we'll CGI dwarves.
Infusing messaging is not what we're up to, Iger said. We need to be entertaining. His comments were likely aimed at critics like Peltz.
So we'll guarantee no employment for little people while getting rid of this other component that warranted CGI. It was the worst decision they could possibly make.
What's her friend screaming?
Wow.
And this probably nobody was in there.
Who accused Disney of leaning too far into woke storytelling at the expense of financial performance.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, definitely share your thoughts below. Do you think Disney's Snow White is doomed to flop, or can it still charm its way into audiences' hearts despite all the controversy? Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because every new sub helps me buy more coffee, and trust me, I'll need an extra strong cup before tackling the next Hollywood controversy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.